All right, welcome back to Adobe Photoshop. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how to create a slideshow with audio inside of Photoshop. Now, as you can see, we're in Lightroom right now. Hold on, I'm going to show you what Lightroom can do for us that Photoshop can't. And not only can Photoshop create a slideshow, but you could actually edit video inside of Adobe Photoshop. Is it the world's greatest video editor? No, but you can do it. It does have a timeline and it will function and allow you to create both slideshows and videos. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide on over here to Adobe Lightroom Classic. And what we're going to use that for is some bulk editing. So what we're going to use Adobe Lightroom Classic for is we have a whole bunch of images and we need to resize them. Lightroom is going to be much easier and much better at doing this bulk process than Adobe Photoshop. Could we do this in Photoshop? Absolutely. But what I'm going to show you is how to do this in Adobe Lightroom Classic. So let's slide on over. All right, so I have imported my images and I've got these horse images into Adobe Lightroom Classic. So what we're going to need to do is resize our images. And why do we need to resize them? Natively, a camera shoots in a 2:3 ratio. So if you've already sized your images and left them at a 2:3 ratio, we're going to need to resize those to 16:9 because we're going to create a full HD, which is 1920 by 1080, but you could do 4K or whatever size video you wanted to create. In this case, we're just going to do full HD. And we need to change the ratio and change the size of the images so they're all exactly the same, and that's going to make the process of creating the slideshow really easily. Now that we're in here, we're going to go ahead and click on the develop module, and we're going to come over here to the crop tool that we see right there. And I'm going to select that. And if it is locked, that won't let you change your ratio. So you would need to unlock that. But we're going to click this and you'll see we've got all these different options. And we're going to slide down here to 16:9, 1920 by 1080, because that's the size video we want to make. And we're going to go ahead and click that. So what that's going to allow us to do is to crop and resize the images, but we're going to have control over how it's done. So what that image looks like, because we're going to be losing a lot off the top and a lot off the bottom, or it could be just on the top or just on the bottom. All right, so I've got this image here and I can control that and I can just simply apply that crop. Now I could bulk and go through here and put that same crop on all the images. That's not going to work this set of images because they're all different. If you wanted to apply the crop that we just did here to all the images, I will show you how to do it. I'm going to hit Command A on a Mac, Control A on a PC. And then we're going to come over here to where it says sync. And we're going to click on sync. And basically, we could sync all of this stuff. And I haven't made any adjustments, but the trick here is right here. We want to make sure crop is selected. And then we could simply just hit synchronize. And it's going to go through and then crop all of these images so that they look like this first image. Now, I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to hit Command Z and undo that. And what we're going to do is manually go through here and select all of our images. Now I've selected our second image. We're going to come back over here to the crop. We're going to select the 16:9 ratio. And then we're simply going to come in here and crop or adjust this image to how we want it. So if I want my image like that, I'm going to go ahead and hit return and apply that crop to that image. And then all I need to do is simply go through the rest of my images and crop them just like I did this, and so that the ratio is all the same. So we don't need to see the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to speed through that. And once I've done cropping everything, we'll come back and I will show you the next step. All right, so I am done cropping the images and I ran into one issue. And so if we slide on over here to this image doesn't really fit the ratio of 16:9 well, because I'm cropping off the feet and I'm cropping off the head. So what I need to decide is this something that I'm going to still use because it crops sort of weird, or should I omit it from the image? And I'm going to omit two images here. So I'm going to select that image. I'm going to hit delete. And I'm just going to delete that from the disk. And hit delete permanently. We're going to delete that, and I'm going to delete this one. And just like that, now we've got the images that we want to use in our final set of images. So the next step is we now need to size them. Remember, we just changed the ratio. We didn't size them yet. We're going to go ahead and export these images to a specific size so then we can import them into Photoshop and start creating that slideshow. All right, so what we're going to do here is we need to select all the images. So I'm going to hit Command A so everything is selected. And to make this easier, we're going to click on the library module. Now to export, you can either come up here to File and go File, Export, or you could come down here and just hit export. Both are going to do the exact same thing. And so what are we going to do? And I will change this. So I'm going to put the images into the same folder as the original photos. Okay. And I want to change and put those called toned slideshow. You could put whatever you want for this. It doesn't make a difference. And then we're going to change those files. So I'm going to save them as a JPEG. My quality is going to be 100. I'm going to do that in the sRGB color profile. We are going to resize these images so the width and the height is different. We want the width to be 1920 and the height to be 1080. Resolution doesn't make a difference. We're going to output these for the screen. We're going to sharpen those at screen and standard, and we're going to go ahead and hit export. Okay. Now I could have added a number sequence if I knew what sequence that I wanted the images in. We are back inside of Adobe Photoshop, and we've created and saved those files out and sized them exactly how we wanted. But the next step is we need to load all of those images into one file. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to do this, and it's going to drastically speed up the process. So if we come on up here to Photoshop, we're going to go up to the file, and we're going to drop down to scripts and load files into a stack. And if you've watched my other videos, you've seen me do this when we're doing a lot of composite work in Photoshop. We're going to go ahead and click that, and we are going to navigate to where the photos are. So this is the SSD where the images are. We're going to click on horses, and then we're going to click on the toned slideshow images. You'll also notice down here, I've got the audio for the track in a separate folder. So we're going to click on this, and I'm just going to hit Command A to select all those images and hit open. And it's going to load all those files. Now, we don't need to align any of these images. We just need all the images together. So we're simply going to click OK. And what Photoshop is going to do is just going to stack those as a bunch of layers so that we can work with them and we don't have to keep opening different tabs and dragging the files over. That's going to make it too difficult. So you can see right here, we've got all of our images right there. To create a slideshow inside of Photoshop is pretty easy, but we need to bring up the timeline window. And that timeline is located under the window menu. So if we come up here to window and we drop down, you will see we've got timeline. So we're going to click on that. And just like that, it's going to create a timeline. Now I've made mine really big so I can see it, but you could simply left click on that dark bar and slide this around to do what you want. Right here, we have the options to do two different things. One, create a video timeline or create a frame animation. We're going to create a video timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and watch what happens. Boom. It automatically loaded all those layers into the timeline that we had over here as layers. So now what we need to do is start organizing these files and moving them around in the sequence that we want the images to be seen in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to show each image for about 3 seconds. Now, you could do it more or less. It doesn't really make a difference. All right, so what we need to do now is I'm going to reorder the timeline, and it's really easy to do. But the issue is you're not going to actually change the order on the timeline. You're going to go over to layers and change where those images are. So right over here, we've got our set of images, and I'm going to adjust some of these because I don't want them all where they are in the location. So I want this to be the first image. So I'm simply going to drag that up, and we could probably have this one down here a little bit. And the running through the water, I'm going to want that later on. So we'll move that to later on. And this looks pretty good. Look, the order doesn't really matter for this video, but it gives you an idea of how to adjust it. You just adjust your layers and then everything will be over here in the order that you want to see them. So right now we see this timeline here, and this is in frames per second. So that's frames per second. And this video is probably running at either 25 or 30 frames per second. I'm not really sure what it's set up as. So to find out what that frame rate is, all of your options are right here under this hamburger menu. So I can click on this and I can slide down to where it says set timeline frame rate. And when I click on that, it's going to bring it up and you can see we've got our different options. We're just going to leave it on 30. We could do it at 25, 24. You could do it at 60, whatever you want. We're going to do 30 because it's the most standard. I'm going to hit OK. So we now know that for every 30 frames, that's going to give us 1 second of video. And the way this timeline works is you can see it's 10 frames and then there's 20 frames. And then right here, it's saying 1 second. And that would be 30 frames as well. And then it shows us here the time and the frame rate between each one. So if we want our first image to run for 3 seconds, we need to adjust this image so it only goes to 3 seconds. So I'm just going to simply go out there, left click and hold and drag this over. And now that's at 3 seconds. So this image is at 3 seconds. And notice when I change this, if you look right above it, it says end at 3 seconds, duration 3 seconds. So we know that we've got that perfect. So I'm simply just going to come over here for all these images and drag them all to the same spot. So we're going to drag this down. So I've changed every slide in this to a duration of 3 seconds. Now the problem with this is if we look at this right here, they're all running in the first seconds, which is not what we want. Now, the reason I sized them like that, it was easy to get them all at the same duration just by doing that. So now what we want to do is if we come down here, we can see that there's a little slider and right here is your frame rate. And we're going to take this and just go to the left. So I want to drag this to the left and this is going to give us more window room up here. All right, so now that we have resized all of our images and that they're the same duration, what we need to do is organize them so that each one plays for 3 seconds. Because right now they're all playing on top of each other and you're only going to see the one image and the whole video is only going to last for 3 seconds. So we need to reorganize them and put one for 3 seconds, another one for 3 seconds. And the way we do that is if we come up here, and we click on this image right here, we can then drag this photo out here like that. And you can see this switch to video group. And because we won't be able to see all this, I'm going to come down here to this little slider that we see with the mountains. And this is going to adjust that timeline. Right here, we've got our frame rate. And so I'm just going to try and left click on this, which is a little bit hard without moving my screen. It up a little bit so I can grab it. And we'll slide that down so we can see everything. And we'll slide that back down. All right. So all we simply need to do is just drag these out in the order that we want to see them. So this is super simple. And since we organize them already in the order that we want to play, we can just simply do that. I can slide this way, or in this case, it's just going to be easier to make this even smaller. So I needed more room, so I just reduced that. So we're simply going to come out here and we will drag the images in the order that we want them into our timeline. And that looks perfect. And then I could zoom back out if I wanted to do that. So it kind of fills the frame and I can see what's going on. And now I can drag this down so that we can just see this and we can see our image here. You could make that bigger or smaller. Command 0 is going to fill the frame so we see the full image. And simply now, if we come play this, what's going to happen is, well, just like we wanted, it's going to play that frame, then this next frame, and then the next frame. We've got images playing in sequence for 3 seconds. What can we do next? Well, one if we want to make the images zoom or pan. If you come over here and you click on the first frame, you'll see right up here, there's like a little play button. If we left click that play button, we get something called motion. And right now it's set to no motion. So if we come over here and we click the drop down menu, you'll notice we've got pan, zoom, rotate and zoom. So we will go ahead and select zoom for this first one. And that brings up another new window. So how do we want this to zoom? Well, right there we've got zoom in, but we could also change this to zoom out. So we can either zoom in or zoom out. In this case, we want to zoom in. Right here, where do we want to zoom from? So this is what we call anchor points. In this case, we want to zoom from this center anchor point. Now, if we want to change the anchor point, we can click on any one of these little outer boxes. So in this case, if we wanted it to zoom from over here, we just click on that, and now that anchor point has changed. So it's going to zoom from this location. In this case, I want this image to zoom from the center, so we're going to click that. The last thing we have is resize to fill canvas. And in this case, we already sized our images perfect. So if I turn that on or off, it's not going to make a difference. And because we're zooming in, we're going to actually go into the photo. We're not going to lose an aspect. But if we did zoom out, we would see the outside borders of the image. So that looks pretty good. Let's see what that looks like. So we can come over here, slide our little timeline there. This is our little play button. We'll click play. You could also just hit the space bar and you can see, voila, just like that, it's zooming in. So then we can go to the second image, click on the same thing, and we'll change this. So we will go pan and zoom. And in this case, we can decide the direction that we want it to go. We can slide this little slider around. So if we want it to go this way for the pan, and then in this case, I'll do zoom out so you can see what it looks like. And we are going to uncheck that so it doesn't fill the canvas. And then we're going to click here, and then I'm going to slide. And then this image is going to zoom out. And you can see it's showing transparency. Now we could add black behind it, but that's what that resize to fit canvas thing means. So in this case, I wouldn't probably want it to zoom out. I want it to zoom in. So we'll go back in time and we'll do pan and zoom. We want it to zoom in. We want it to go from this direction. We want resize to fill canvas, and we're good. We'll slide our playhead over to here. And now when it does the zoom, we won't get any of that transparency because it's zooming in. But it's also panning, so it's moving the image to the left as we do. And so we could simply go through and apply different motions to all the images. We can do different ones. We can do all the same. We can do some with, some without. Doesn't make a difference. But the next thing we're going to take a look at is making a transition between the images. Now, you don't have to put, but if we want to add a transition, we can do that as well. So if we come up here, this is our little transition symbol. And if you click on that, you're going to get another little window. And so we have the option to fade, crossfade, fade with black, with white, fade with color, and change the duration of any of those options. So I think by default it was at 1, but you can click on this and slide this little slider. In this case, we're going to do that because that's what I set it at. And we're going to do a crossfade between these first two images. To do that, I'm simply going to left click, hold, and drag. You can see that little black box that goes around the end of both of those images. That's showing you the duration. You can hold and let go. All right. So now if we come over here, we're going to come to this image. You can see we crossfade between those two images. If I wanted that duration to be faster, I could decrease it so it happens quicker. Or if I wanted it to be longer, I could increase the duration so it lasts longer. So that is how you add a crossfade. And if I wanted to do something different where I want it to, in this case, let's have it fade to black on the very last image. I can come over to here. And then when I click on that timeline, you'll see, boom, fades to black. So in this case, what I'm going to simply do is I'm just going to do a crossfade. And I thought that one was a little bit too fast. So I'm going to change this to 0.25. That's going to be my duration. And I'm just going to drag these between all of these images that we see here. We'll click out here to get rid of it. And now we can run through, and you will see that when I hit the space bar, which is play, it's going to run and pan on this first image, and then it's going to crossfade into the second image, and then pan and zoom, and then crossfade. Now on this image, we didn't add any motion, so it's just going to crossfade into the next image, and so on. So we've basically created the timeline for this image. Now, all right, so now that we have created the timeline, we're going to come in here and add our audio to this file. So to add an audio track, we're going to come over here. You'll notice we've got pluses, so we can add two. So if I click the plus, we've got the images right here. I have created the audio file. We're going to open that. And right here is the MP3. We're going to go ahead and open this. So just like that, added that audio clip here. Now, right now, the audio clip is too long, so we can cut that. So if I move this end of the video, and with this selected, I can come up here and click this little icon that looks like scissors. I'm going to click that, and now it's cut it. So I'm just going to click on this and hit delete because we don't need that. And then I can slide back here. And now, not only do we have a slideshow, but we're going to also introduce music into this photo. If you want to come in here, you'll notice that we have some little icons right here. So there's a little sound. I can turn the sound off and the sound on. I can also click this where I can do an add audio track or change some information. Now, if we want to change the volume of the audio, I'm going to right click, and you can see we can make the audio volume. We can come out less or more. We can have it here fade in and fade out. So if I wanted to fade out over the last 3 seconds, I can say, hey, fade out. And the audio faded out in the last 3 seconds. Just like before, we could change it so that the audio fades in, but because this is the beginning of the song, we don't really need that. Well, that's it on how to create a slideshow inside of Adobe Photoshop. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. Don't forget to subscribe and have an absolutely wonderful day.